So last week I talked about prepping for a 90s gig. Well, that gig happened, so let's talk about how it went. Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Adam, welcome to the channel. So this week's video is going to be a little different than what I normally do because I've got a really exciting video to release next week, but it's going to be probably earlier than we normally do this. So thank you for understanding. Just note that there's some really exciting things going on over here, and I wanted to make sure that I got a chance to release something for you guys in anticipation of this other thing that's happening. So let's get into it. So this particular gig was billed as a 90s prom, and the gig was held at an event called the Southern Fried Gaming Expo, which is in Atlanta. The Southern Fried Gaming Expo is a really awesome event. It's basically a 3-day deal where these people take over a hotel and any possible gaming component that you could think of is there. So whether you're into card playing games, role playing games, arcade consoles, like they cover everything. And it was a cool opportunity because my eldest son got to come with us and basically work as an A2, helping the front of house guy get all of our stuff set up. And he got to spend the rest of the time walking around looking at video games and all the things that he's into. So it was kind of a win-win for everybody. Now this particular gig has a couple of tricky components. The first one is that it's in a hotel kind of conference center area, and getting in and out of parking can be kind of complicated. The second is that the space that we were doing the performance in was being used all day long by tons and tons of different things. So we actually only had an hour to clear the room, set everything up, and then be ready for downbeat. It goes without saying that's a really tight time frame to squeeze a bunch of stuff in, but this is kind of the way that this gig goes apparently every year, and we were just gonna have to roll with it. So we arrived at the event around 6 o'clock, which gave us about an hour, 2 hours to kind of wander around and see all the things that we wanted to see. It's really neat because the main exhibit hall is just a bunch of arcade games and pinball machines, and they're all set to free play, and you can just play whatever game you want to. And there's a bunch of really cool vendors and artists that are selling their wares. I ended up buying some really cool 3D portraits. This guy's work is amazing. I'll put a link to his stuff in the description. And so after we wandered around a little bit, the rest of the band showed up and we started to pile up all of our gear to get ready to load it into the event space. So this event was in a ballroom on the second floor of this facility, and we had to go through a freight elevator. The funny part is that the event that was going on right before we started to load in for our show was a wrestling event. So here we are loading in and setting up all of this gear in this kind of backstage area while these sweaty dudes in wrestling outfits are running in and out, kind of talking through their storylines and practicing their choreography.
I didn't mean choreography. Wrestling's totally real. It's totally real.
So when the event finished, they had to take apart a wrestling ring and move a bunch of stuff around, which kind of put us in a bit of a spot because we had to clear the stage because it was covered in chairs. But once that was done, we loaded all of our stuff in, put it on stage, and started doing sound check. Now, like I said, we had just about an hour to get all of this sorted, so time was of the essence, and there was very little margin for error. We did run into some technical issues. One of the challenges was that we were plugging our in-ear system in front of house into an existing PA that was in the room, and there were a couple of other logistical challenges that we had to overcome, but we were able to overcome those obstacles fairly quickly. For this gig, my main guitar was my Epiphone Lemelia Signature Explorer, running through my Line 6 HX Stomp rig. I had an iPad to run my in-ear mix from, and I was using my Shure SM55 for vocals. My secondary guitar was my Schecter Nick Johnston Signature Strat. I was planning on using that one primarily, but at the time of the show, I just thought the Explorer looked more fun, and so that's the one I went with. I had fully prepared to use chord charts on the songs that I was kind of not 100% on, but if any of you have ever played in a hotel or a conference center, you know that the Wi-Fi situation is always super dicey. And so it became pretty apparent early on that switching from mixing my in-ears to chord charts was not going to work. The good news is that with the preparation that I did the week prior that I talked about in last week's video, I ended up not needing the chord charts at all. So it turns out the things that I prioritized in my practicing for the gig ended up paying off. As far as the show itself goes, we ended up calling a lot of audibles, which is not something that we would normally do, but because of the way that the show flowed and just kind of the way that the crowd was going, we ended up doing a bunch of songs that we hadn't planned on doing initially. It was also one of the situations where we had clicks for a lot of songs, but then ended up not using them for some of them, which again is not something that would normally happen, but I think because of the vibe of the music and just kind of the way the crowd was going, it made more sense to just kind of do things a bit faster and looser. The crowd had a blast. The guy who booked the show was super thrilled with the way things went, and playing wise, I'd give myself a 7.5, 8 out of 10. The work that I put into the material paid off, and while things could have definitely gone better, there were moments in that show that I could not have anticipated that went really well, and were kind of those brilliant moments that you get when you're playing on stage and things are kind of exciting and not 100% dialed in, and you're just waiting for like some electricity to kind of happen in the room. And they did. And it was a whole lot of fun and had an absolute blast. Doing this was also a great way to onboard a bunch of 90s material for a project that I've been trying to launch for the past few years. So even though this is technically a one-off, it's going to pour into a bunch of potential new business in the future. It was a solid experience, had a bunch of fun. I'm waiting for the footage to come back because I really want to see how the pictures and videos turned out. And when they do, I'll share them with you guys. So that basically wraps it up. Pretty solid gig, some stuff learned, some stuff missed, but overall things went really, really well. It couldn't have gone better. So there you have it, that's the recap of my 90s gig. Hopefully it turns into more 90s work in the future, but after the month that I've had, I'm really looking forward to the fact that I don't have anywhere to be this weekend. That's gonna do it for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We post new videos here every single Friday. That being said, the video for next week is probably not gonna drop on Friday. It's gonna drop sometime earlier in the week, so stay tuned for that if you aren't already subscribed. So make sure that you ring the bell to get notifications when new videos are posted. I'm super excited for this next video to come out. It's a really big deal for me, and I hope that you guys dig it. Have an awesome week, and we'll see you next time.